So
আমরা 6:05 শুরু করব। এখনো তো আমাদের প্রেসিডেন্ট সাহেব আসেনি মনে হচ্ছে। সুদীপ,
হ্যাঁ স্যার,
প্রেসিডেন্ট সাহেবকে দেখছি না।
প্রেসিডেন্ট কি আসবে
প্রেসিডেন্ট সাহেব
বলেছেন?
জয়েন করেন না এখন।
বলেছেন, উনি কনফার্ম করেছেন আসবে?
না, আলাদা করতে আমি কথা বলিনি। আমি তো ওই তোমার ফ্লায়ারে যেমন থাকে তেমনি করেই। প্রফেসর মুন্দাদাও তো দেখছি না আমি।
না তো কনফার্ম।
ওরা তো এমনি থাকেন, আর আলাদা করে তো কিছু বলা হয় না, ওরা থাকেন তো।
চলে গেছে কেউ নেই?
তুমি দেখো, আমি তো কাউকে দেখতে পাচ্ছি না।
হ্যাঁ আমি সেটাই, ওনারা তো কেন কনফার্ম তো করেননি, কারণ প্রেসিডেন্ট 23 তারিখের একটা কনফার্ম করেছে,
ও,
কিন্তু এটা তো কিছু করেননি।
সে তোমাকেই করে কনফার্ম, তোমার কাছেই পাঠায় বোধ হয় নাকি?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ।
তো
না,
আমি
তাহলে আজকে একটু সকালে একটু জেনে নিলে হতো যে উনি থাকতে পারছেন কিনা, মানে
ও আচ্ছা, কিন্তু প্রত্যেকটা আমাদের প্রত্যেকটা প্রোগ্রামই থাকেন এখন অব্দি যতগুলো প্রোগ্রাম।
রাইট, কিন্তু কোনো কোনো কারণে
আমি এক্স্যাক্টলি, হ্যাঁ না সে তো বটেই, হতেই পারে।
যদি
প্রফেসর
সকালবেলা
মুন্দাদা রয়েছেন, সন্দীপকেও এখন দেখিনি আমি এখনো, প্রেসিডেন্ট সাহেবও নেই দেখছি এখনো। আমি 6:05 অব্দি দেখে আমরা ইয়ে করবো, তাই তো?
আমরা
Okay,
স্টার্ট, হ্যাঁ আমরা স্টার্ট করব, ইন দ্য মিন টাইম জয়েন
যদি
করলে
ওনার,
করে
হ্যাঁ
নেব।
ডেফিনেটলি।
আমাদের
আচ্ছা, কাউন্সিল মেম্বারদের কাছে গেছে না ইনভাইটেশন সুদীপ?
সব কর্পোরেট মেম্বারের কাছে গেছে, অল কর্পোরেট মেম্বার।
তার মানে কাউন্সিল মেম্বারস ইনক্লুডেড, রাইট?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ।
ওকে।
হ্যাঁ, আমাদের সেক্রেটারি সাহেব কোথায়?
সেক্রেটারি
উনি আছেন,
লাস্ট আইটেম আছে বলে হয়তো দেরি করে আসবেন ম্যাডাম কিছু।
হ্যাঁ।
ওকে।
ডক্টর দেখেও দেখছি না, ডক্টর দেখে আমি বলেছিলাম, উনি মেলও পেয়েছেন নিশ্চয়ই।
অলোকনাথ দে,
হ্যাঁ,
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা,
তাদের কোনো প্রোগ্রাম ছিল তো তখনই
হ্যাঁ,
বলে
হ্যাঁ,
বেচারা
হ্যাঁ।
মেল গেছে আর কি, শুধু তো মেল পাঠিয়েছে সবাইকে।
হুম। না, মেল তো যাচ্ছে, মেল সবার কাছে যাচ্ছে, মানে যাবে।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ,
হয়তো যদি কোনো না কোনো ব্যস্ত থাকে তাহলে
মানে কোয়াইট নাইট বা কোয়াইট, আমি আলাদা করে এবার থেকে বলবো আর কি সবাইকে। আমি ভেবেছিলাম ফ্লায়ারে যখন যায় অটোমেটিক্যালি ব্যাপারটা হবে হয়তো। বিমল দা, তাহলে আমরা ওই 6:05 এক্স্যাক্টলি শুরু করে দেবো, কেমন?
ঠিক আছে, ওকে ওকে ওকে, নো প্রবলেম।
আমি সন্দীপকে দেখছি না, সন্দীপকে আমি সকালে কথা হলো, সব ও তো জানে প্রোগ্রাম, একটা মেসেজও পাঠালো আমাকে একটা অন্য। ও, সন্দীপ ইজ মিটিং জানাচ্ছে, ইজ অলরেডি ইন মিটিং।
অন্য মিটিং আছে না? ওকে ওকে।
আমি মেসেজ পাঠালাম, উত্তর দিল। তাহলে হয়তো সেক্রেটারি জয়েন করে গেছে। গুড ইভিনিং সেক্রেটারি সাহেব।
এটা কালকে করে দেব।
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you. So, Mr. Chairman, with your kind permission, we start the program.
Oh yes, yes, yes. Oh yes, please continue.
Our program this evening, AI in Healthcare. We request Dr. Nimal Das, Chairman, West Bengal State Center, IEI, to give the welcome address.
Well, good evening, everybody. Now, Dr. Hemanto Thakre, our President of IEI, Mr. Sandeep Kumar Dev, Vice President, Dr. G. Ranganathan, the Chairman of our CATE, that is Center for Advanced Technology and Engineering. Professor Girish Mundada is a chairman of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering Division Board. Our distinguished guest speaker, Professor Dr. Madhurima Chattopadhyay, HOD, and Dr. Debojit Choudhury, Assistant Professor, both from Department of Applied Electronics and Instrumentation, Heritage Institute of Technology, one of the best institutes in Kolkata. Moderator, Engineer Ram Chagna Chakraborty, Honorary Secretary of West Bengal, Dr. Raju Bashak, distinguished corporate members, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed my great privilege and honor to be speaking over here in this technical webinar, AI in Healthcare, this evening, organized by the Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering Division of West Bengal State Center, the Institute of Engineers, India. Being the largest professional body of its kind in Asia, IEI has given me this unique opportunity to welcome this gathering, today's gathering of eminent engineers and technologists. On this occasion, let me have a warm welcome to our guest speakers, Dr. Madhurima Chattopadhyay, Dr. Debojit Choudhury, our President, Vice President, all corporate members, distinguished guests, the staffs of IEI, and my beloved students. As you know, IEI is serving this engineering fraternity for over a century with its national and international presence. Through Indian and overseas chapter with 15 engineering disciplines and a corporate membership about 3 lakhs. IEI also has been recognized as scientific and industrial research organization by the Ministry of Science and Technology, Government of India, and it is the first professional body to represent India in several international bodies. Once upon a time was there when young engineers used to join this IEI with manifold for their professional excellence and growth. Fellow member of IEI, as you know, commands a great respect in engineering fraternity even today. We, on behalf of West Bengal State Center, therefore urge to have more and more young participants and join this engineering as a membership so that we can enrich our institution and regain its past glory. Now come to this today's seminar. As you know, last couple of years, we have been suffering by the pandemic across the world. And because of that, we had to shift from offline program to webinar, and it's still continuing in some cases. Like today's program also in webinar mode. Today, the same topic is AI in healthcare. As you know, the healthcare is an umbrella term to describe the application of machine learning algorithms and other cognitive technologies in medical science. Using patient data and other information, AI can help doctors and medical providers deliver more accurate diagnosis and treatment plans. Also, AI can help make healthcare more predictive and proactive by analyzing big data to develop improved preventive care and recommendations for patients. Let us join together and enrich our knowledge through this technical discussion and know more and more in this area. Thank you.
Ramda, you are muted. Please unmute.
Juggling between screens, so that's the thing. Okay. May I now request Engineer Chanchal Chakraborty, convener, Electronics Telecommunication Engineering Division, West Bengal State Center, IEI, to elaborate the theme.
Good
Chanchal.
evening, everyone. Today, before this August audience, we are going to make a webinar on AI in healthcare. In the earlier occasions, we have made the generic presentation on artificial intelligence. We have seen the application of CNN and RNN in industrial environment. We have made the presentations on AI in agriculture and other aspects. We had a request from the so many people that we should have a seminar on AI on healthcare, how the healthcare is getting supported by artificial intelligence. You must be knowing that artificial intelligence has all pervasive applications. Whether it is in telecom, whether it is in business, whether it is in sales, marketing, finance, everywhere, artificial intelligence is getting applied. So healthcare cannot be left behind. Rather, we must have seen that during the pandemic time, the artificial intelligence application has come all the way to get actually diagnose the diseases. Similarly, we must have seen that artificial intelligence is able to detect the cancer cells. Specifically, we have seen the examples from Johns Hopkins University. Now, today, we will be seeing that how the AI can be applied in healthcare with the different kind of sensors. Specifically, today our panelists will be discussing about electrical impedance tomography, MEMS capacitive sensors for malignancy detection, and study on MEMS-based microfluidic device for sorting and count of blood cells. Now, this is having wide applications for detection of the diseases in the different types of cancer, thalassemia, anemia, malaria, and polycythemia. So today we'll be listening from our eminent panelists who are the subject matter experts, and they are working on their own hands, and they have developed several sensors and applications in healthcare. So today we'll be looking for the kind of solution matrix for this type of applications in healthcare for the betterment of the society. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chanchal. We have Mr. Sandeep Kumar Dev, Vice President, IEI. I will request Sandeep to address the gathering. Sandeep. Hello, Sandeep. I can see his name in the attendees list. I'm okay. Oh, okay. Sudeep, you are still there? Sudeep is not there. He said he is not. I am not a panelist. Can I make him a panelist, Sandeep Kumar Dev? Chanchal, any idea?
And you have to make from the admin, you have to make it, select that, and you have to put it into panelist frame.
Where is the admin?
Admin was Sudeep only.
Sudeep is not there. I think he's left.
Who is controlling the program? Actually,
Sudeep
he has got the authority to enable.
No, but he has given us a host. Sandeep is there.
Sandeep, I have allowed you.
Okay.
Please make yourself unmute, and then you can tell.
Okay.
So
Thank you,
can you
Chanchal.
hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sandeep, clearly.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, it's better that you can hear me, although just I have to give you my address if it is required at all, because this is absolutely a technical program, and I am an absolutely keen person to listen from Dr. Madhumita Chattopadhyay and Dr. Jyoti Chaudhary. And as because you have already announced my name, so it is my duty to say that it's really wonderful that the Electronics and Telecommunication Division, they have been arranging this type of webinars during the pandemic time. And after the pandemic, I believe that it is over. Still they are on their way. And under the able leadership of Dr. Nirmal Das, the chairman of West Bengal State Center, and Professor Dr. Raju Bosak, the honorary secretary of West Bengal State Center, I believe the center is doing an excellent job in propagating the technology and science which is there from for Institution of Engineers India to propagate all through the, not only all through the India, but all through the world. Well, Already, Dr. Nirmal Das has stated about the activities of IEI. I do not want to lengthen anything more because everybody is covered by Dr. Das. So I'm now ready to listen to our speakers. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to speak before this audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. May I now introduce our honorable speakers. Professor Madhurima Chattopadhyay is BTech from Jadavpur University, MTech from Calcutta University, and PhD from IISc Bangalore. She is currently head of the Department of Applied Electronics and Instrumentation Engineering at Heritage Institute of Technology. She has over 20 years of experience in teaching and research. Professor Chattopadhyay has vast expertise in different subjects and areas. Her current areas of research encompass, among others, MEMS-based smart sensor, biomedical instrumentation, IoT-based medical devices, instrumentation scheme for cost-effective sensor drive of brushless DC motor, and electrical impedance tomography. She has recently completed a MEMS-based biopressure sensor for medical activities under Fast Track Young Scientist Scheme from ACRB DST. Currently, she is pursuing 3 more DBT-funded projects along with the students in related areas. Professor Chattopadhyay has published more than 100 papers, including international journal and conference papers. Sole authored a book related to a research subject and co-authored 10 Springer books chapters. She has delivered several invited lectures both in national and international conferences. She is a chartered engineer of the Institute of Engineers, and she is also a fellow member of the Institute of Engineers. And she is a life member of Instrumentation Society of India and Institute of Smart Structures and Systems. She is also a member of International Society of Automation, ISA, USA. She is a reviewer as well as on the editorial board of several peer-reviewed journals and publication houses. Professor Chattopadhyay is the recipient of prestigious Gandhian Young Technological Innovation Award 2016 at Rashtrapati Bhavan, New Delhi. She was also awarded twice by DBT with BIRAC, Biotechnology Industrial Research Assistance Council, Srishti Appreciation Award for inventing 2 innovative devices for rural healthcare in 2017. She has also been awarded for guiding best PG thesis by the Institute of Smart Structures and Systems in 2015. So we are eagerly waiting to hear from ma'am. And then we have a co-panelist, Dr. Debojyoti Chaudhary. He is currently working as assistant professor in the Department of Applied Electronics and Instrumentation, Heritage Institute of Technology, Kolkata. Dr. Chaudhary has obtained his PhD degree in the field of electronics and instrumentation. His research interest involves MEMS sensor, brushless DC motor drives, micro-wearable sensors, embedded systems, IoT, machine learning, and robotics. Dr. Chaudhary's innovation endeavors landed him the prestigious Gandhian Young Technological Award 2016 from Rashtrapati Bhavan, New Delhi, including other recognitions like Best Research Paper Award and BIRAC Srishti Appreciation Award funded by DBT, India in the year 2017. Besides being the inventor of Indian patents on MEMS devices, he has published research papers in various reputed journals like IEEE Transactions, Instrumentation and Measurement, conferences, and also acts as an active reviewer of IEEE transactions in power systems and microsystem technology, Springer. Here we have two learned experts to deliberate on the topic AI in healthcare. Over to the panelist.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for giving such a nice introduction. Good evening, respected delegates, Dr. Dash, Professor Dr. Vashak, Mr. Chanchal Chakraborty, and participants, and my student, colleague, Dr. Debojyoti Chaudhary. So today we are going to present AI in healthcare. Here I would like to mention that Dr. Chaudhary has recently completed his PhD under my guidance, and we work together. So first up, I will give you the introduction, and live demo or the detailing will be done by Dr. Chaudhary. So may I start, sir?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Please, ma'am, please.
Okay, thank you. Slides are moving or not?
Yes, slides are visible. Moving. No
Slides are
issue.
moving, but it's very slow. Yes. So today's topic is artificial intelligence in healthcare. So this is the outline of our presentation. Now the question is, though few minutes back, already our, I think Dr. Dash has already described what is AI, but I also willing to give a definition that is from according to the encyclopedia. Artificial intelligence is nothing but the ability of a digital computer to perform tasks completely associated with intelligent beings. Now the question is, what is intelligent beings? Intelligent beings are those that can adapt the changes in the environment or circumstances. Or in other word, we can say that artificial intelligence involves a simulation, or if we are trying to mimic the intelligence of human being in machines by using computations of artificial intelligence. So now the question is, it is a computational thing or it is an algorithm, then how is it connected with the real world or real environment? We are walking, we are dancing, singing, talking, everything is analog signal in this world. How does this analog signal is actually processed to the artificial intelligence? If we see this diagram, then we can easily understand that the real-time data is captured by sensors, and this physical data or signals are transmitted or processed to the artificial intelligence. Computation is done there, and then the data is executed in the process or real world by using actuators. So it is just like our human body. We are having 5 sensors. Those are very high quality intelligent sensors. All of us know that. And through these sensors, we are getting the signal in our head. The artificial intelligence of human being is there, not artificial. The intelligence of human being is there inside our brain. So brain is processing this signal through the actuators. In case of human being, actuators are hands and legs. Suppose a mosquito is biting. So what will we do? We use the other hand to just make a tap. But if a dog is coming towards us, we are not going to use the same actuator, our hand. Either we will run away or just we will take a danda to stop the dog. Means our intelligence in such a level so that we can easily identify which type of actuator is used for which type of action. So when we are talking with the sensors, we require smart sensing. Now the question is, what is smart sensing? Before 2020, means before COVID-19, we all were used to this type of thermometers for measuring human body temperature. This is contact type device. Both analog and digital thermometers are there in our home. But as COVID comes, everybody was concerned everywhere. Everybody is concerned about it. And we are looking for a non-contact device, that is radiation type of thermometer, where we are using thermopile, and that is also in a micro scale that I will come later. Now question is, what is smart sensing? Smart sensing actually consists by this sensing element that is embedded with signal conditioning, processing, as well as communication part, so that smart sensor can communicate with the outside world very easily. Through this type of sensing, we can fit to the computer, or we can fit data to microcontroller so that the data can be processed easily. Now, this is the technology roadmap where we were, where we are, and where we are going. Now we are in 2022. So this is an era of sensing, means this is the era of interaction. Before 2010, we don't have smartphone. Only computers, laptops we are working on it. And after 2010, when smartphones came into the market, smartphone means mobile phone becomes smart by the use of smart sensors and actuators. And with the invention of smart sensors or actuators, lots of medical wearable devices comes into play. So these devices are mainly used for medical purposes. Drones are there for medical and agriculture purposes. And now it is going on, and beyond 2030, the era of actuation will start. Now we are talking about driverless car. We are talking about smart home. That time it is quite easy. That time autonomous vehicles and smart home, space travel, robots, everything will come into the market. Now the question is how the behavior of sensing is changing. How does the sensors are changing? Sometimes we are putting this type of intelligence inside the sensor itself. In fourth generation sensors, you can see MEMS is the sensing element, and signal processing, conditioning, and digital ports are the part of the sensors. But in fifth generation sensors, we can use, instead of a single sensing unit, we can use multiple sensing device in the forms of MEMS. MEMS is micro electromechanical systems. The size of the MEMS device is in microns. Microns means, how do you realize micron? It is 1/10 the width of human hair. So sometimes it's quite difficult to identify to our normal eye. So in fifth generation sensors, you can see inside the sensor microcontroller is there, programmable ROM is there, analog to digital converter is there. Means we can put the intelligence inside the sensor. And then the question may come, why we have taken micro electromechanical systems as sensing unit? Because it has lots of advantages. Due to small size, it will take less power from the battery. So the longevity of the battery must be much higher compared to other devices. And it is based on semiconductor technology. Fabrication is similar to IC technology. So through batch processing, from a single wafer, we can produce hundreds of sensors together. So it is cost effective, better sensitivity, and due to its fabrication is similar to IC technology. Some things are quite difficult because IC technology is a two-dimensional, and while we are doing systems, means sensors and actuators, that is actually 3D. So, but both are semiconductor-based thing. So we can easily fabricate the signal conditioning circuitry within the same chip where we are developing the sensor and actuator. This helps to make us system on a chip, lab on a chip type things. Now, the three pillars of MEMS. First one is the design. We have to visualize the sensor or actuator, whatever we are willing to make. It is a system. It is not only a sensor, not only an actuator, it is a system. So first we have to know the physics behind it, the working principle of it, and then we have to choose the material. Choice of material is also very interesting. Mainly semiconductor materials we are choosing. but we know a country like India, fabrication labs are very costly, clean rooms are very costly. So these days people are trying to develop or some polymer sensors and then the fabrication procedure. So all are interlinked to each other. This is the fabrication techniques that is similar to IC technology, and here you can see from a single wafer, we can, after sectioning, we can get 100 or 50 sensors, we take individual die, and finally we make the system ready. Now, what are the smart sensor? How do you use, actually we are using smart sensors or this type of MEMS sensors in medical care or healthcare? So if we are trying to classify biological MEMS devices, it is of two types. Biomedical MEMS that normally deals with in vivo or invasive within the host body. And number two is the biotechnology MEMS that is in vitro, that is from non-invasive from outside we are doing this. So biomedical MEMS, we all know these days we are going for microsurgery, robotic surgery, precision surgery, means laparoscopic surgery, where we are putting actuators or sensors inside our body. In case of pacemaker, putting pacemaker or doing angioplasty, this type of surgery, the surgical devices are made of biomedical MEMS. And these days we are hearing that doctor is far away from the patient and they are doing operation that is under the biotelemetry. Then for drug delivery, biosensors and other physical sensors that sometimes embedded inside our body, that is under biomedical MEMS. And biotechnology MEMS mainly used for diagnostic purpose, gene sequencing, drug discovery that we know, and pathogen detection, etc., etc. Now, what are the advantages of using MEMS devices in medical field? First of all, due to small size, it will take small volume of reagent sample, that is maybe blood or serum, whatever, for analysis. So that is one thing. Number two, as I have already told, low power consumption. Number three, less invasive because size is low or small. So less impact with body, less painful. Number four, as integration permits, so large number of systems to be built on a single chip. So system on a chip can be possible. Batch processing, as I have already explained, it actually helps to minimize the cost. Then existing IC technology, it can be used to make these devices, so it can be easily interfaces with CMOS circuitry. And when we are putting this type of devices inside, we have to check whether the material of these sensors are compatible with human tissue or human body or not. The first thing that we can watch here, that this is normal blood pressure monitoring device. And this is the same device on fingertip. So this is in micro scale. Here, these are the micro needles. We are all aware of needles for injection purpose. Needles are required. So here out of plane and in plane needles. Then endoscopy. I think more or less 30 or 40% of us already got the experience of endoscopy. So endoscopy is a painful process. We have to inject the camera with optical fiber cable inside our body, and the parts of our body are not straight. So there are so many bends and curves are there. So it is quite painful to actually insert this device inside our body, because we all know that optical fiber cables have certain limit on bending angles are there. So it is quite painful, costly, as well as we have to visit some diagnostic center for 1 or 2 or 3 hours. So after this, we are facing some trouble to have food and all. So there is a solution for this type of drug delivery. That this is the solution. This is called capsule endoscopy. That is lab on a pill concept. The size of the same device, capsule endoscopy size is 35 millimeter, just remind it. And it is having the following components. It is having some acid transmitter, lens holder, optical dome, CMOS image sensor, acid transmitter, antenna, etc., etc. So when we are taking it, it passes the parts of our body, it follows, and if the camera captures the photos and then photos or images and then send it to the doctor's console. So doctor who is sitting outside can monitor the condition of patient's body from this capsule endoscopy. And it can aid in early detection of colon cancer, as it is mentioned here. And another concept is smart pill that we can insert in our body. And there is a reservoir filled with insulin. Those who are taking insulin, it is quite painful to take injection each and every day before meal. So instead of doing injection each and every day, if we put this type of sensor inside our body, that can have insulin and some transmitting antenna and some sensors which is measuring body insulin all the time continuously. When there is a requirement, it can burst the insulin, and if this reservoir is out of the insulin, then this antenna can give information to the outside world. We have to refill the reservoir like that. This is very interesting concept. That is the concept of smart dust or MEMS dust. We know dust particles are very, very tiny and they can easily float. So these sensors are quite invisible. In invisible way, they can capture the information and can transmit too. So these smart dust are actually tiny wireless MEMS device that can detect everything from light to vibrations. Means the sensors we are putting here, that will, according to the demand, the parameter we are willing to measure, that we can put. So same concept that we see in the movie Mr. India, where person was invisible but it was seen. So here you can see that the size of this MEMS dust comparing with the dandelion seed. So it is very, very small and it can easily float in the air around us. There are several applications smart dust is having, and these are the different units of smart dust, and it makes the system ready like this. Then we'll go for medical prosthesis, mainly for microsurgery, laparoscopic surgery, or robotic surgery. For surgery, we need some medical tools. So, and we know in case of laparoscopic surgery, doctor is not opening the body, but we are doing the surgery with small aperture or holes. So through these small holes, we are actually inserting the surgical tools. So that is one interesting thing. So surgical instruments are mainly made of shape memory alloy materials. The beauty of this material is that it can recovers its shape while we are actually change the loading or temperature. So here I am showing you a few things like stents that is used for angioplasty. What is happening when some fat or cholesterol is deposited in our artery? It will block like this. So it is quite difficult to open. So we are taking this type of matchstick type of stent that we are putting inside the blocked artery, And once it's put inside the blocked artery, it regains its original shape of netted cylinder so that it opens the blockage and blood can easily pass through it. So this is the beauty of this type of material. This material itself works as an actuator. So the concept is totally different that we are having in macro world. It can be used for zoom device, used for as smart skin to reduce wing turbulence in case of aircraft. These are the few applications of SMS in biomedical purpose. Then I will give you some example of eye glucose sensor. Instead of doing Acoustic each and every morning, if the person is wearing this contact lens, this sensor that detects glucose from tears is connected or embedded inside the contact lens, so that it can continuously monitor the glucose through tears, and if it beyond the certain level, it can gives information to the strip antenna out to the outside world. And these days, these shaw sensors, that is surface acoustic wave sensors, are very, very popular. Here you can see it is very popular in case of mobile base station or mobile transmission, because it can use as a bandpass filter there. But it has immense application in biomedical purpose. If we are willing to detect a particular antigen, then we will make a layer of antibody on this place, active region. And if we pass the sample with that particular antigen, then this antibody will bond with the antigen and it creates a loading so that the output signal will change and it can easily detect the presence of that particular antigen. So this is a very useful device in case of detection of any antigen. This is used, this is called MEMS imaging sensor. This is used for retinal prosthesis. I'm not going in detail of this. Then I will come to our work that we have started long back, just after my master's. So first I started working on pressure sensors. So I started working on piezoresistive pressure sensor, and I developed 4 such sensors, 2 circular and 2 square. In upper 2 cases, the piezoresistive wire is deposited on the top of the diaphragm, and in lower 2, the piezoresistive wire is embedded on the diaphragm. Then did the fabrication and all, then studied the electrical mechanical studies. But main problem is that this piezoresistive pressure sensor are sensitive to temperature. So I have moved from piezoresistive to capacitive pressure sensor. And first pressure sensor that we have developed in our lab is respiration rate monitoring sensor. We know for any adult person in resting condition, the breathing rate is 12 to 16 per minute, and the corresponding frequency is 0.2 Hz. And the beauty of this sensor is that it can continuously monitor the breathing rate. And no need of going to any diagnostic center. You can put it through a mask that I can show you later. And the other methods that is commonly used in diagnostic center and other places is impedance tomography, acoustic sensing, fiber optic sensing. And the most popular one is the respiratory impedance plethysmograph, that is RIP method, where we have to put 2 belts, coils on our chest and belly, and then due to the change of mutual inductance, it can measure the respiration rate at instant of time. So this is the way we have developed, and this is the cross-sectional view. And here you can see through the mask, the sensor is connected with the mask. Just if the array of sensors are attached here with the mask, so that we can easily measure the exhale pressure. It is near the nostril. Performance analysis, and now afterwards I will show you one application by using this sensor. Next is the MEMS capacitive sensor array, once again for measurement of heart rate. It is again, we know that human respiratory abnormal condition like tachycardia, where heart rate is less than 100 and slower rate and causing bradycardia like that. So heart rate we can measure through our radial artery by touch sensation, and another method is by using optical plethysmograph, that is PPG we are calling. So this is the way through PPG we are measuring. There is a light emitter and light sensor together. So for measurement of heart rate from fingertip, there is a problem is that always this finger is engaged, it is covered, and two things like emitter and sensor to be powered. So if we want to make the power efficient device, so we are looking for a solution that is capacitive type of sensor. So we make an array of capacitive type of sensor and putting in the radial artery. There are so many places of human body, so many locations in human body from where we can measure the heart rate or pulse rate. So we have preferred this one and we put array of sensors here. Is that the diagram? And third one is the energy efficient hearing aid, because there is a problem with hearing aid that we know, because the cost of the battery that are using in hearing aids are quite costly, and longevity of the battery is also less. So it is quite difficult for poor people to survive with a hearing aid with so costly batteries. So we are trying to give a solution that this pair of microphones is the common hearing aid. It can be replaced by MEMS microphone so that the power efficiency will be better. So we have designed the microphone, and finally, if time permits, I'll show you. So for designing purpose, we have a collaboration with IntelliSense USA. They have given us the software called IntelliSuite where we are doing the design. And for national collaboration, sometimes I am associated with INFP program of IISc Bangalore. So next I am going to show you another capacitive type of pressure sensor, capacitive type of MEMS sensor that can detect malignancy in cells from a known volume of WBC. As we know, in case of malignancy, suddenly the WBCs in our blood increases. So, and there is the abnormality that can be located in WBC that we are trying to capture here through electrical property that I will come later. So the main attributes that we are willing to develop, it should be smaller in size, that is look like this type of size. It consists of a voltage control oscillator, the sensor, and as it is a capacitive type of sensor, so there must be a capacity to voltage converter, and finally the display. So it is small in size, portable to carry, cost effective. No pathological lab conditions are required, lab on a system or lab on a chip type. So if we give a drop of blood, this type of changes may happen. Means if the cell membrane permittivity, we have studied through literature that cell membrane permittivity changes in case of malignancy. So if the cell membrane permittivity lies within this value, means all cells present within the known volume of blood are all malignant. If this value is between 9.9 to 11.5 means few cells within the specified blood are malignant and few cells are normal. And if it is beyond 11.5 means all the cells present in the particular volume are normal. So this is our motto, that normally when we are doing the test whether person having malignancy or not through biopsy, it is we are trying to locate whether any change in shape and size of the cell happened or not, whether the thickness changes or not, diameter changes or not, like that. So this type of behavioral these changes comes, physical changes comes after a certain period of time. So instead of looking to the biological parameters, we are looking for electrical parameters. We are trying to understand, is there any change of dielectric permittivity, conductivity, or impedance? And if this we are willing to get it, if there is a small change, so significant changes can be opted from the initial stage. That is one benefit of this system. Then we met the electrical model of WBC, and then we studied the frequency response for the cell. Later on, Dr. Devajyoti will give you the detail how we have used artificial intelligence here and how we are detecting the malignancy that he will describe, demonstrated, rather demonstrate here. These last two works got Bairak Shishti Appreciation Award, and we have a MOU with Semiconductor Laboratory ISRO, and by the help of them, we have developed the sensor. So we can see the size of the sensor, this much size, having 50 sensors. So with a drop of blood, it can send data to the doctor's mobile, and this type of curve we can achieve. The next thing that I will describe is the microfluidic device, that is a small fluidic device that can sort and count blood cells. We know for any diseases, for diagnostic purpose, doctor asks us for CBC count. But it is quite difficult to get this diagnostic center in a village. So for any such sort of diagnostic, they have to visit nearby town. So we are trying to give a solution that is first detection of malaria, anemia, leukemia, etc. portable. It should be portable, affordable, easy to use, so that in the block levels hospital doctors can use it. And we are using the concept of dielectrophoresis, where you can see the blood cells according to their size when we are applying voltage following different paths. So by the effect of dielectrophoresis, we can actually differentiate three types of cells. The diagnostic center, people are using hematology analyzer for doing this particular test, CBC test. And hematology analyzer is a costly device and is a desktop type device, and it requires some reagents, and its analyzing time is 1.10 minutes. And CBC test results actually gives the indication of different diseases. So CBC test is a preliminary check for few diseases, so doctor always suggests it. And this is our design, that we are passing the blood, and these are the electrodes, and we are doing dielectrophoresis so that WBC, RBC, and platelets are differentiating in three different parts, and there are counters which is counting the number of cells. So size of this device is 1.5 centimeter cross 1.5 centimeter, and we have fabricated it at RRCAT Indore, that is Raja Ramanna Center of Advanced Technology, that is from Atomic Energy, that is under Department of Atomic Energy, Government of India. Then I will show you few devices that we have developed in our lab. We all know about computed tomography. It is, we know X-ray is a two-dimensional thing, so we can get a two-dimensional pictorial view through X-ray. But if there is a lump or stone inside our body, we have to go for CT scan. CT scan is computed tomography. So it is a three-dimensional thing. So not only the pictorial view, we can get the size or shape of the tumor or lump or stones like that. But it has lots of negative events for human body, that is high level of X-ray sources are there. So doctor always suggests that there must be 6 months gap between two consecutive CT scan. So we are trying to give a solution by using electrical impedance tomography. It is again an imaging technology with a sensory system, but it's not hazardous and it is a cost-effective thing. Then I will show you a low-cost, smart, continuous pressure this CPAP device that is used as mechanical ventilator. We know if suddenly breathing rate deteriorates, that is less than 12, what will happen? It's called bradypnea. That is not good for health, and in case of COPD diseases, this type of thing happens. So this is the block diagram, and for this device we got a pattern, and you can see this is the circuitry, and we have used busless DC motor for the sucking purpose of air from outside, and it is having the intelligence. Means here you see abnormal and normal breathing patterns of human beings of different age group. Means this is the normal breathing pattern of human beings from 3 to 12 years, and this is the abnormal breathing. And this is the normal breathing pattern for human beings 12 to 50 years, and this is beyond that. So breathing pattern actually changes with ages. So that is there, this instrument is that much intelligent that when we are putting it, it can easily identify which age group the human being is, and it can take the corrective action accordingly. For this work, we got Best Student PG Thesis Award at DRDO Lab Kochi from Institute of Smart Structures and Systems. Thank you. Now, Dr. Devjyoti Chaudhary will give you the idea that how have we developed different devices by using artificial intelligence. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, can I start presenting?
Yeah, please.
Please start.
Please carry on.
Yeah. So thank you, the panelists who are there, and Institute of Engineers for this platform that you have given us. So as ma'am was talking about, she talked a lot of what kind of sensors should be used, or the various different type of things that you have in terms of the smart sensors and what kind of sensing that we do in terms of biomedical devices. So I'll be more of focusing on what do we do with the data. So there's a saying that goes in instrumentation, which is because that's what we belong from. What we say is your data is only as good as the very sensor that you have. So that's why we majorly focus on developing smart sensors, and whatever the data that we generate from that, we do some intelligent processing on it. So let's take a look at what are the different type of traditional view that normal AI served applications have. So what we generally do is we start with these medical sensors, the one which ma'am talked about. So we connect them with some kind of edge computer. So this is the device which is responsible for gathering all the sensor data from the patient's body, or maybe from some other area, or if the person has gone into some kind of treatment, and we upload it to an edge computer, from which we have any kind of local connectivity. You can use LoRaWAN or the other kind of techniques that you have, like Bluetooth, or any kind of network connectivity that basically allows sensors to talk with each other. Now, after the edge computing, we use a wide area network to basically enable the data ingestion. So this is basically where you store the entire data that you have gathered from the patient's body. And with this data, we actually have some kind of server application which analyzes it and then makes all the decisions that you would take based on this data. Now, this is the fundamental way of how you probably would have any kind of AI application that applies in case of medical devices. However, there are a couple of problems using this top-down approach that you have in case of gathering the sensor data and then uploading it to a cloud. So the main issue with this kind of approach would be it's not able to provide you with real-time data analytics. Now, the issue with what happens in case of like medical applications is be it the cancer sensor, which ma'am talked about, or any kind of breathing rate sensor, whatever are the devices that are monitoring the people's activity, these devices need to give you real-time data. So the doctor who is actually looking at the analysis is going to be able to tell what is wrong with that particular patient's body. So in that case, the real-time data analytics is something very much important. And in no way that this whole cloud approach where you're taking the data from the edge device and then uploading it back to the cloud, which takes the decision and sends back the information, this would take at least around 10 to 15 milliseconds of latency. So in that case, we can totally see that the real-time data analysis is of course not there. Second of all, you can also have a situation where you have got a lot of sensors producing a lot of data. And what would generally happen is you won't have that much amount of compute power to basically ingest that amount of data at that particular rate. Because you can totally imagine if you can just go by putting maybe 6 sensors per patient body, and if you have got 20 patients, so that much amount of data you're generating and it's exponentially growing. So in that case, what should we do to basically allow the cloud side of things to be able to handle that amount of data? Also, we are not just talking about data which comes from like feeble sensors like pressure sensors or maybe temperature sensors. We might even be looking at some imagery data which is probably being generated because somebody is trying to scan maybe a X-ray or something like that. So that much amount of data you're now going to transmit over a particular network, and you would be needing that much amount of bandwidth. And of course, the last thing that comes into play is security, because we already know what happens when you basically collect user data and then you keep it on your server, and then you go ahead and sell it to somebody else who can make you targeted ads. And that's how basic like your data that you're generating in the social media or maybe some other applications that you're using, other web applications that you're using would generally work out. What if something such happens in case of medical data? Your data about, the information about that you have, and maybe you're pre-diabetic or something like that, could be sold to potential like pharma companies so that they can sell you targeted ads about diabetic medications. So these are the things which basically comes into play when it happens, like when it comes into the medical prognosis. So in that case, having or using AI in case of medical field comes with a lot of pros and cons, and these need to be tackled. So basically, to summarize whatever the challenges that are there in case of AI, in case of using AI in healthcare, it can definitely be summarized into these following points. So of course, you have got injuries and errors. So if an AI makes a wrong decision about something, this can lead to a fatal situation for probably a patient. So if, say, for example, an AI prescribes a particular drug for a patient, and the idea about whether this patient is allergic to this drug, or maybe this person is having some other different kind of disease, may interfere with this kind of like decision being taken by the AI. Also, if you look at the situation where the data availability, so say, for example, if you are taking some kind of health record, and if there is some health record which is missing from this AI, it would basically have a situation where there is a partial idea about what is being done in, or what is the situation in the patient's body. Similarly, privacy, that is what we have already talked about. And the very last one is where you actually see the thing which we have in case of, even in case of self-driving cars, like this pretty news came up recently, because all the self-driving cars were trained to work in the Western localities. So they were making some mistakes in identifying people with the darker skin. So these kind of bias in the AI system is something which is highly like dangerous when it comes to medical applications. So we are trying to take a turn from here and then come up with the fact that could somehow we, eliminate all these problems. Of course, privacy and the other things like the wrong diagnosis or maybe data availability, these can be solved by training the AI on a maybe much more sparse data set. But the problem which we saw before, like about using the huge bandwidth or maybe the latency problem that we had, could those be solved in a bit different way than just using that server model which you saw before? So the basic thing is, right now, the machine learning that we know about, the one which works in case of your server-based systems, is right now moving to the edge. Now, edge would be the very devices which gather this sensor data, and they have got these small embedded systems on them. So we are basically going to see a situation where these AI systems are going to focus more and more on the applications that they have on the edge. And as we go through my presentation, you will see how far we have used edge ML as something as a part of our some of our projects. And you will also see 2 more applications from our work which does not use any ML but are targeted medical applications. So first of all is the bandwidth, which we already talked about. Bandwidth is something which we need. More sensors that you add to the person's body, that much amount of network latency or maybe network bandwidth you are going to require to upload the sensor data. And these would be sensors which are like temperature sensor, body pressure sensor, and bunch of other sensors which ma'am already talked about, and even imagery data, as I already said. It could be scans of maybe X-rays or something like that. So as you're uploading the data, you're hogging that much amount of bandwidth. This needs to be tackled. Of course, power is one of the most important thing, and we all know we are using an enormous amount of power in basically training all the neural networks that we have. And probably there is also a statistics which came up which showed that some percentage of the global warming was contributed by the entire amount of power that we are using in probably training AI and doing Bitcoin mining. So these kind of things need to be taken care of. If we are actually thinking about AI, which is unanimous and ubiquitous, then we have to think about even the power consumptions that goes into like training these kind of neural networks. Of course, cost is something which is very important. Not everybody can afford to have a big server which has a Tesla GPU and a big amount of compute power. So that amount of cost does involve, if that amount of cost is there, then that final cost will also translate down to the very service that we're trying to provide to these like patients that we have. So cost needs to be tackled too. Of course, latency, that's what we talked about. The amount of network latency actually stops these kind of techniques to become a real-time one and give them analysis at the very instant. Next is reliability, because we would want these kind of analysis to happen at the very point where the sensor is taking the data. We want these connections to be very much reliable. We want them to upload the right amount of data that is what we are gathering. And the last of all is, of course, security. So we don't want any kind of patient data to be there on the server. We want the entire patient data to be with the patient itself and gets destroyed every time the analysis is being done. So let's look at some of the basics that we have in terms of like standard AI things. So we start with artificial intelligence. That's a big umbrella of everything, where we basically say machines are thinking, artificially thinking, and sub part of it would be machine learning, which is basically where you train algorithms based on some kind of labeled data. And this is basically going to be supervised machine learning, which is where you're giving out the patient data and telling them what kind of the problem they have. And then the new data comes and you start predicting whatever the problem is. Then comes deep learning, which is basically a part of machine learning that uses deep neural networks. At the very end would be the algorithms that we use. So at the very beginning of the talk, we talked about CNNs and RNNs or maybe something else. So these would be the algorithms which you generally use to do a much more in-depth and probably better analysis in terms of image data or maybe some other kind of data. So to start with the basics, you have got a training data in case of your AI systems. With the training data, you basically train a neural network, and this neural network spits out the very model that you have now trained on this huge training data. So what you do is you show it a new image and outcomes with the neural network and your model, the very prediction as to what it happens in case of like unseen data. Now, this is how generally we would have like gone by like training a neural network in a standard procedure. But let's see what happens when we try to do the same thing and try to have this entire recognition system or entire neural network be running on a single microcontroller, which is connected with the very sensor itself. So that's what we are going for. We are trying to minimize the neural network that we know and love and bring it down to a level where it can basically run on a standard microcontroller. Now, we would be exposed to various different kind of microcontrollers. Say, for example, people do use the Arduino for lots of their projects. There are a bunch of variations of this Arduino. People might also be using this thing called as a Raspberry Pi. So these are some computers which are like given for people who are hobbyists and are trying to do something in the world of computing. So let's see what happens when you try to bring down these kind of neural networks to the level of a microcontroller. Now, for our specific applications, what generally happens if you are using an embedded device is you have constraints both in terms of the model size, because you are dealing with microcontrollers which are generally having a very less amount of storage on them, also RAM space on them. So of course, the very model that you have trained, be it a neural network or be it a CNN, whatever it is, that also needs to fit on this microcontroller for it to be able to run the inference on the data that you are generating. Of course, we have to also reduce battery consumption and latency, because we would want these devices to be basically able to somehow optimize power usage so that they can run forever, not just forever, but for a longer period of time, so that you can have or take a good amount of time between changing the batteries that you have used for this kind of device. So that's something which is there. So we want to reduce the amount of computations that is required while we are running inference on the data that we have gathered from this particular sensor. Of course, because we are using a very low powered like CPU, which is the microcontroller's CPU over here. So we'll also have to come up with ways in which you debug the code that we are generating, and also reduce, because of reduced computational power, we want to also want to somehow like tackle this reduced computational complexity and somehow be able to run our neural networks, even like the very way they used to run on a proper x86 machine. So these are some of the things that we need to take care of when we are, thinking of running neural networks on an embedded system. So generally, in our applications, and you will see on later, we generally stick to ARM processors when it comes to running the neural networks on the edge. And just to get you acquainted with what kind of processors does ARM offer when it comes to like running neural networks on the edge. So you start with the very low power devices. These would be the Cortex M0 processors, which would be the most, the least costly like processor. And these would be some things which are take less amount of power, and they are generally devices which are generally devices that don't pack that much amount of computing power in it. And those who are not acquainted with Cortex processors, which are devices that ARM generally manufactures. So Cortex M would be the microcontroller profile, and the processors which we have in our phone or maybe on these Raspberry Pi computers are Cortex A. Those are application profile processors, but the ones which are only dealing with are Cortex M0 ones. So this would be ARM 6 version 6 processor. Then coming back to ARM version 7, is going to be a Cortex M0. Again, these are the two processors which pack in very high energy efficiency, but they are not that much amount of computationally capable. On the very top is the performance efficiency processors, which is Cortex M3 and Cortex M4. You would see that we'll be using these processors to do some of the applications that I'm going to talk about in the later on of my slides. And at the very top are going to be the Cortex M7. These are the processors which have dedicated DSP on them. So you can totally think of running neural networks on them, because you now have got that much amount of floating point computational power to be able to do all those matrix multiplications which you need when you are to run any kind of inference on these computers. So at the very top, you will find the M7 processors, and we have done a couple of applications on them. And when you will be putting the comparisons, you will be able to see how efficient that these processors are compared to the M0 ones, the ones which are very low power ones. So moving along, together with this entire architecture that you have in terms of the microcontrollers, you also have to have that much amount of software compatibility. So we generally train all our models using this thing called as Tensorflow, which is something that is an open source project, which is basically a machine learning framework by Google, and it's an open source project. And if you're trying to run these kind of machine learning models on the microcontrollers that we talked about before in the previous slide, then you would be encountering something called as the CMSIS NN, which is basically Cortex microcontrollers interface for running neural networks on a single microcontroller, which is going to do all the computation inside it. So let's look at the very process with which we try to train a model and then like deploy it on the edge. So you first start by training the model on the very computer that you're developing on. So it can be a machine, where it can be an x86 machine, and you have probably written your model using TensorFlow and in Python. So that's something which you have done. So that's your development machine. You save the model in terms of whatever you like, in terms of protocol buffer, or maybe as a KRAS file, whatever that you choose. So that's what you do. After that, you convert the model, because right now these kind of models would require you to use 32-bit precision floating point numbers. But since you are trying to deploy these kind of models on a single microcontroller, which is only capable of doing that much amount of integer operations, so you generally have to convert the model into TensorFlow Lite. That's what they call it. And then you copy this converted model into the very device onto which you want to run your computation. And of course, the very device that you're running this model on would run this TensorFlow Lite interpreter, which is responsible for doing all the computation on your purpose and understanding what your model means. So why do you actually need to convert the model? The main reason why is because you want to make the memory footprint much, much smaller, because you're running this entire inference on probably on a microcontroller. So it has, and it's proper to assume that it has a very less memory footprint. Of course, you also want to make the amount of power that you are using to run this inferences more efficient. You want to use less memory and use less energy while running these inferences. So that's much important, and that's why you are actually converting the model into a smaller version, and we call this as quantization. So generally, depending on the type of target device that you're using, your quantization level will change. So what you generally do is you start with your application, and then you take these frameworks. Either you go with TensorFlow, and then it's probably going to be an LLVM network. So TensorFlow is going to generate the code for you, and the rest of the pipeline is going to generate target-specific code, which is going to be interpreted by the CMSIS NN, which is basically ARM's equivalent of running neural networks, and that is what you deploy on the Cortex processors. Also, there is another route that you can use. You can directly have your application be written in CMSIS NN, which you can deploy on a target machine. So CMSIS NN is basically a low-level neural network functions for the Cortex MCQs. And with that, you can develop these neural network kernels and use that to essentially deploy it on the microcontrollers that we have talked about. Now, this is something which is open source, and you can totally go ahead and click on this link, which I've listed down below, and get your version of CMSIS NN and start coding up whatever target specific application that you want to do. So moving along, if you generally are interested in converting your neural network model into something that you want to target, you want to run on probably a simple microcontroller. So this is what you have to do. So essentially, you import TensorFlow, and then what you do is you invoke the TensorFlow Lite converter, which basically converts your model and saves it in the form of a TensorFlow Lite model, which you can, and based on this kind of graph, and deploy it on a microcontroller. However, one thing that you'll have to remember is you, instead of running the model as a standard model that generally happens when you save a KRAS model like this, but over here, TensorFlow Lite is going to convert your entire model in the form of a flat buffer. Now, what a flat buffer is, it's basically a data structure which TensorFlow uses, which is very linear data structure and uses much less memory than the compared KRAS models, so that it can run on probably on a single microcontroller. And the benefit of using flat buffer is it's cross platform compatible, so it can basically target processors which are running C++ or which are running embedded C and stuff like that. So this is how the entire process that happens. What you do in terms of converting, taking a neural network model and converting it back into TensorFlow and then using it on your machine. So with that idea on our mind, let's look at some of the applications that we have worked on and we have probably used in case of our applications in healthcare. Now, at the very beginning of this session, we did talk about AI that was probably able to detect cancerous cells, and also Madhurima ma'am showed us a single sensor that we had fabricated, which was able to detect cancerous cells. Now let's go over the entire framework that we have designed in order for us to be able to do this. So we start with a very sensor, a custom fabricated sensor, and probably this is an homage to the fact that in instrumentation we have this saying, your data is going to be as good as the very sensor that you have designed. And that's why we need a very custom sensor that we have. So this, we start with a custom sensor array that you have seen before in her presentation. Whatever we do, we take its data, that the cells that we put on it, we take its bioimpedance data, and we put it through a decision state, which is basically responsible for understanding what kind of impedance data it's reading. Now the question is, why are we talking about bioimpedance so much? Now, generally what happens is, and if you have had a talk with any kind of doctor, they would say the moment they are trying to understand what kind of activity that the cancer cells are doing, they generally go by, or they generally try to understand the physical parameter changes that happens in a cell. And what do we mean by the physical parameters? It's probably going to be the hardness of the cell. It's probably going to be the lifetime of the cell, or how much water they are containing, or how much thick has the wall become. So these are probably some of the indicators which these doctors do take into consideration while classifying a cell if it's cancerous or not cancerous. Now, through literature study and even through experimentation, we have found out that long before these physical changes come in the cell, the bioimpedance signature of the cell also changes. So potentially there is a fact that we might be able to do some kind of early detection if we study these bioimpedance data well inside a cell. Now, in order for us to do that, what we did was we went ahead and fabricated the sensor, which is already saw before in our presentation. These are some of the design parameters we have used. We used the 5 micrometer fabrication. It was done using silicon, and the rest of the other important parameters that you have seen here. So the entire like the width of the sensor is around 1,800 micrometer. That's there, and you have got around 400 interdigitated electrodes in this particular sensor, and together they give you around a capacitance of around 4.12 picofarads. Now that's how the sensor looks like. You can see all its dimensions. And the question is, why is this sensor so much important? We could have just taken the cancer cells in some way or the other, but this sensor which we had fabricated, the one which you're calling the bioimpedance sensor, is responsible for allocating each and every or taking in each and every WBC that is there in the human blood and putting it inside in such a way that we are going to be able to study their individual bioimpedances. So with this particular sensor, and you can see it around, beside a 2 rupee coin that we have, and how small this particular sensor is. So once you put a drop of blood on this particular sensor, you can do a lot of math on it and then basically calculate the amount of impedance that this particular cell is going to offer. Now, if you take a look at table 2, you'll generally see how the cytoplasmic radius and the membrane thickness, or the cytometric permittivity and everything else changes from a normal monocyte to one that is cancerous. So we have used THP1 over here. THP1 is essentially a cell line, which you generally go by for testing any kind of medical applications. So instead of going directly for testing of blood, which is drawn directly from a live sample, we went with a cell line first and validated our idea, a theoretical idea, which is over here. So you can totally see how much difference is there between the 2 parameters that is there between the normal cell and between the THP1. So together with this idea, what we did was we designed this simple embedded system, which allowed us to gather the bioimpedance data from all different kinds of cells. And we varied the concentration of cells starting from 100%, and we went up to 10%. And we gathered the impedance data of the cell from 1 kilohertz to 100 kilohertz. So that's basically a frequency analysis of the cells that we put in this sensor was done. And this is the embedded system which we have over here. And this is a standard microcontroller which allows you to get the data from this network analyzer that is there. Now with this, we formed the data set. And you can together, what we did was we trained this neural network model on using TensorFlow, and we were able to run the inference on a single board computer, which is what we call as the Raspberry Pi. And you can see the device that I'm holding in my hand over here, how small it is. This is the very board which is responsible for gathering all the data. And this one is the one which is responsible for running the neural network interfaces. So this is the network analyzer. And together, this entire device without the help of any kind of internet application, is able to run inference and then tell you with a certainty of around 95% whether a particular blood sample is cancerous or whether it's not. Now, in this case, just to make things a bit more visual, we added these two LEDs over here, which basically glows with a particular color. So red for cancerous and green for non-cancerous. And we were able to do this just by running this neural network on the very edge. Now, for this, I'm not going into the details, but I'll be sharing my GitHub link at the very end. So there you can see all the Python code that we have written, which analyzes the sensor data. But we were able to train this model and then convert it back into the TensorFlow Lite model, which was used to run inference on this simple ARM11 CPU, which is again an application profile CPU. But in this case, we were not using a microcontroller because we needed the benefit of having a Linux operating system. So instead, we stuck with an application level processor. Yet this processor was only single core, running at 1 gigahertz, and it had 1 gigabyte of RAM, which allowed us to run all this neural network analysis right on top of it. Now, the next application which we are currently working in truly uses an application of a neural network on the edge, which is basically an cardiac occultation device. Now, it generally happens that, majority of the stethoscopes which are used by the doctors would be in the form of a thing that people put on their, on their ears and then listen to how the heart sound is behaving. Now, in this case, this is a very primitive device, and probably any majority of the doctors had probably used this device. However, there are some applications where you can actually employ an AI to be better able to analyze the heart sounds that are coming from a patient. And you would probably, and if you had probably looked into the entire research world, publications regarding analyzing heart sound data is probably out everywhere. However, majority of these applications or these papers target any kind of AI application that is being trained on a big computer, and then somehow they try to bring in the audio from the from the patient's heart. However, we truly believe that if you want to really understand what is happening with the patient's heart activity, you have to come up with a solution, or maybe as a product which directly fits on the frontal lobe or on the chest of a patient, and maybe record the sound over there and directly give you the analysis at that very particular points. So this application is truly going to aim at that particular point. So what we did is we took this particular approach where we understood what kind of other sounds that the body comes up with besides generating the heart sounds. So if we are to listen to the sound that the body, that the heart is producing, we have to also probably gather the data, or we will definitely gather data about the heart sounds or about the lung sounds and any other environmental noise we are definitely going to pick out. So what we did was we started by analyzing this model that we have. And for this, we are using a MEMS microphone, which is an I2S microphone that we have. And you can totally see how small the microphone is. And it's courtesy of having MEMS fabrication. You can totally use this particular small sensor to detect, to maybe listen to somebody's heart sounds. And what we did was we gathered around 10 seconds of heart audio. And here you can actually see 8 seconds of that heart audio plotted. And you can see how the sounds are being generated. But merely looking at the graph, which is over here, we cannot tell whether this is a heart sound that is being generated because of maybe some kind of issue. We don't know that. We somehow need to come up with an AI solution which works on the edge, and it's able to do the recognition and tell whether this heart sound is maybe the normal one or maybe it's something else. Now, if you look at the feature extraction pipeline that we have, we generally are considering the impulse response of the microphone. So you have got the audio you have coming in, which is ET, and then you have got the noise being mixed with it, and then it's multiplied with the impulse response of the microphone that basically which we are using to sense the signal from the heart sound. So together we can form this equation with it, and then we start by looking at the entire pipeline, which basically allows you to gather some kind of features and then maybe feed it in case of neural networks. Now, this might seem a little bit foreign for everyone because we are accustomed in fitting raw data to a neural network and have that particular set of algorithms extract the feature for us. Now, generally in case of a standard AI application, that would be the norm. But if you are trying to deploy an AI application which works on the edge, it's better to extract the features that you have way before you feed the data to the neural network, just to reduce the amount of computational intensity that you want to emphasize on this particular microcontroller. So this is a general norm that we have. So we do feature extraction way before we feed the data to the neural network if you're doing applications in case of like standard like microcontroller or TF-Lite applications. So with that, we do a FFT on it. And after that, we calculate its power. And this power signal that we generate, we feed it to something called as a triangular filter bank or MEL filter bank. And with that, we gather something called as the MEL filter bank energy. We take a log of that and we pass it through an DCT transform, which basically yields us all the frequency components that are there in this particular audio signal. So we started with this audio signal that we have over here. This is the first feature that we have extracted in the form of MEL filter energy. This is the second feature that we have gathered, which is the log of the MEL filter energy. And the last one being the MFCC, which is basically MEL frequency substrate coefficient. So we are actually looking at each and every of these features that we have extracted. Each feature needs an extra computational step. So in terms of the MEL filter energy, we are just going to get done by multiplying the MEL frequency, the MEL filter with the power spectrum that we have got. So one step is reduced. In the log filter, MEL filter energy, we are going to apply a log analysis on the extracted filter energies. And in the MFCC part, after we are done taking the log of the MEL filter energy, we pass it through a DCT like transform, so that just we can compress it. And in our application, we have extracted around 26 MEL frequency substrate coefficients, and we have done it around for 150 frames. So for each and every of the features that we have extracted, there is one extra computational step. And we want to see how well does this computational step allow, does it increase the efficiency of detection, or how far is it going to affect on the time of inference that is being used on the microcontroller. So if you look at it, so if you do classify this neural network, and this is the architecture of the neural network, we are using a 1D conv net. And finally, at the very end, we are putting it through a dense neural network, which is classifying the entire data into two classes, normal or in the abnormal class. Now, what we do is we are using the quantization, which is essentially 8-bit or 16-bit quantization. And this quantization is necessary because we are going to run this neural network on a single computer. And you can totally see the confusion matrix, which comes when you are running the for the neural network with the MEL filter energy. The efficiency is around 87%. If you are using log of MEL filter energy, it's around 96%. And the highest of all is MFCC with 97%. However, a very important point that should be noted over here is, although MFCC is giving you the highest of accuracy, but it also does take 2 more extra computational steps to be there on the microcontroller. So that is something which you'll have to consider. It's a win-win situation. Do you want to increase your efficiency, or do you want to increase the amount of inference time? Now, that is what exactly we are studying right now. And we are looking at all the kind of inferences that you are going to be able to do it. So this is basically a device in development. You can totally see the breadboard version of it. And I was testing the device. That's an SD card connected to it, which is basically having all the audio data in it. And you can see over here from the screenshot of the Arduino frame, the ID that I'm using, it's probably able to classify the very class of the audio that we have given into Murmur. And again, just as our previous device, we again have 2 LEDs over here. The red one being glowed for Murmur sound, or maybe for the abnormal sound, and the green one for the normal heart sound that is being generated. So this, by the way, is a Teensy 4.0. It's a Cortex M4 based microcontroller, and this down over here is a Nano 33 BLE Sense. It's an Arduino board which uses the Cortex M4 architecture. Now you will totally see how well is the inference time changing when we are switching between architectures. So at the very first device which we tested was a Raspberry Pi Pico, which is the Cortex M0 Plus CPU, and it's running at 133 megahertz. It's a dual core processor that is there, and you can totally see how high the inference time is. And as we go down and as we go up in terms of architecture from M4 to M7, even though you don't see that much huge bump in the clock frequency, you can totally see the Cortex M4 processor, which is the Latency, with its 600 megahertz core clock, it's able to give you inference times around 1,659 microseconds. So that's pretty fast. And you can totally think of that kind of inference time as probably near to real time. So in that case, if you take a look at all kinds of content that you run on the Cortex M4 processors, you will be able to also get this kind of like timings. So this is something which we did by running some standard algorithms on it and checking how much time it was taking for it to convert. We do need some kind of compact models to run on, which is something which we have already talked about. And these are some of the standard neural network or maybe our network architectures that you can run on the Cortex M4 and the Cortex M7 CPUs that are there for what kind of testing. Now, with this, I'd like to talk about some healthcare devices which do not use machine learning. Now, machine learning is something which is a buzzword in today, and in majority like health applications, if not before, do use some kind of AI application in it. However, I'd like to emphasize on this fact that medical applications are very sensitive in nature, and even a single bit of getting some kind of patient data and pre-training a neural network on it is something which is something that needs to be taken care of. So in this case, we'd like to we decided to tackle one of the most popular devices or medical device that the market has to offer. Is the pedometer, which most of us use. We have probably used it before. Now, generally, these pedometers would tether with our Android phones via Bluetooth, but we wanted to come up with an application which ran using a $2 microcontroller and did all the recognitions of understanding whether you're walking, how many steps you took, and all kind of gesture recognitions that are there on the microcontroller. And we do not want to also use a standard ARM Cortex microcontroller. So for that, we came up with a very optimized algorithm, which essentially takes the accelerometer data and it passes it through some kind of filter and then converts it in the form of spikes. And what you'll see is as the walking speed is changing. So this is the speed with which we are walking. So you can see the distance between the spikes is at a particular value. But as you are increasing your walking speed, the distance between the spikes are also decreasing. So just by counting the number of spikes, we're able to tell how many steps a person took. And just by looking at the distance between the two spikes, we were able to tell what kind of activity were they performing. And with that algorithm on our $2 device, we started testing it with the Moto 360, with the Xiaomi Mi Band and the Google Fit app, which generally any smartphone has. And we found out that our algorithm was producing errors of around 2%, which is pretty good in terms of like the other applications that you generally find in the market. And this entire device costs just around 200 rupees. So that is something which we are trying to do in terms of like good embedded system application. You definitely can use an AI over here, which works on the wrist and maybe does the recognition. But we wanted to have a balance between putting a neural network, gathering users' data, and pre-training these AI just by coming up with a proper optimized algorithm. Now, with this, one last thing that I'd like to talk about is a spoon for the Parkinson's disease patients. Again, this is something which is very much sensitive. Majority of the person that we have talked about and we have talked regarding this device do not want to share some kind of medical data. So again, we have used this optimized algorithm and you can see the device in action. So generally people with Parkinson's disease would have a lot of tremory hands. And we wanted to come up with a way of somehow balancing these tremors by keeping the spoon stable and just letting their hands do all the tremor. So in this case, this is the model that we have. So you have got an actuator which actuates in a particular direction. It senses the direction, then it gives out to a controller. And you have got a MEMS IMU over here, which senses the direction and the orientation of the motions that we do. And these are some of the control systems that we are using internally, which allows us to stabilize the spoon handle that is there. And of course, we can use some kind of IoT application, and we are using some kind of IoT application which allows to track the frequency of the hand movements and upload it to the doctor so that they can better prescribe the medicines that they are giving. to the patients. And you can totally see the device in action over here. Even though I'm spinning my hand in a different way, it's able to keep the spoon upright. And we did some kind of analysis as to how much reduction we are getting, and we saw that it was able to do it around 22.8%. Now, of course, if we are going to use some kind of AI or some other application, we could have achieved, probably we could have achieved a much more better reduction rate. But again, we had to strike the balance between, using user data and maybe come up with some other applications that is there. So this particular, work fetched us this Gandhian Young Technological Innovation Award together with Dr. Madhurima ma'am and I. We got this award in 2016 in the Rashtrapati Bhavan. And with this, I have come to the very end of my presentation. Anybody who would like to, take a look at all the work that we have talked about and maybe get in touch with us, could definitely go ahead and scan these QR codes. They will get all the details about the work that we are doing. It's definitely there on my GitHub. With this, I'd like to come at the very end of my presentation. Thank you, everyone. Should I stop my presentation?
Yes.
Yeah.
We have listened to the experts and just simply amazing the amount of work they're doing in the field of MEMS and is the healthcare industry. So we have few questions. I can see from this somebody has raised some queries. I will try to bring it to our learned speakers. There are 6 questions I see.
Yeah.
One, Mr. Hirendra Kumar Ghosh, he has asked how many has joined. I think I have seen maximum 45, and then if anybody has more than that, I don't know. And then subsequently, number has reduced. Second question is from Commodore Dr. Bhaskar Bhandarkar. Is it possible to share the recording or PPT of the webinar? I think it will be shared with the Institute of Engineers, and they may share it. I don't know the principle they follow in sharing the PPTs. And then again, a question from Dr. Bhaskar Bhandarkar. Any efforts to detect cytokine storm in COVID-19? May I request the panelists if they have any answer for that? Any efforts to detect cytokine storm in COVID-19?
This awfully looks like a very medical question. We are not medical. Ma'am, if you'd like to tackle it, but
for this, actually, real-time data is required, I think.
Yeah.
So that some ethical question will come. You know that it should be passed from ethics committee of a hospital. That is quite difficult. We are teaching and doing research again, sitting in hospital. Yeah. Sometimes not possible. That's why it is.
Okay. Next question from Mr. Bishwajit Paul. Good evening. Are these MEMS devices commercially available for medical purposes in India? What are the cost also for devices like for endoscopy capsule?
Endoscopy capsule device is actually it's going on in hospitals. Few years back, one of my students' father did this, but cost is very high here. He has done it MRI, short leg, so it is available.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I think 10 years back, I have seen it in this tropical medicine. Some doctor was using this.
Okay.
So I think actually we are taking it from outside and then doing this for medical purpose. That's why it's a little bit costly. But in some places, suppose
it depends on the prognosis which the doctor gives, whether if they want to go for like normal endoscopy or maybe that. So it totally depends on the doctor.
In some parts of our body that cannot be detected by using normal endoscopy, there this camera can't reach. So capsule endoscopy can take those photos also. So lots of advantages are there.
Maybe with time, with many more users using that, price will come down as like solar cell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then Commodore Dr. Bhaskar Vandarkar congratulated the speakers on the award they received. And he also appreciated the presentation given. He said it's a nice presentation. I think one of the last questions
Thank you, sir.
yeah.
Thank you.
Shubham Chatterjee. Hello, good evening. This is Shubham Chatterjee. The lens which detects the glucose value of eye, is it some type of contact lens? And lastly, how it gets powered? Thanks in advance.
That's powered, that one sort of small battery is there, otherwise it will not get powered. Okay, there is a circuit embedded. The antenna is also there, some transmitting module, so that the data is transmitting outside, that how much glucose level is detected from the tears. So these are the smart devices. Everything is there.
Okay. And
They
then
are self-sufficient.
okay. Sujata Batil ma'am has wished good evening to all. I think this is all the questions we have received, and we have responded to all the 10 questions. Now, may I now request Professor Dr. Raju Bashak, Honorary Secretary, West Bengal State Center, IEI, to propose vote of thanks.
Is it audible?
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Engineer Amchandra Chakraborty, for giving me the opportunity to propose my vote of thanks. So it is my proud privilege to extend my sincere thanks and gratitude to all the distinguished participants in the technical webinar on the theme AI in healthcare, organized by the Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering Division of West Bengal State Center IEI to online platform. At the outset, I convey my regards and sincere thanks to all the panelists, Professor Dr. Madhurima Chattopadhyay, Head Department of Applied Electronics and Instrumentation Engineering, Heritage Institute of Technology, Kolkata, and Dr. Devjyoti Chaudhary, Assistant Professor, Department of Applied Electronics and Instrumentation Engineering, Heritage Institute of Technology, Kolkata. On today's technical webinar, we have nicely deliberated their lecture. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Professor Devjyoti Chaudhary too. So my sincere thanks also goes to my colleague, Dr. Nirmal Das, Chairman, West Bengal State Center, IEI. My heartfelt thanks also goes to Dr. H.O. Thakre, President, IEI, Professor Dr. Girish Srikishan Mundadada, Chairman, Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering Division Board, IEI, and Dr. G. Ranganath, Chairman of CATE, IEI. My heartfelt thanks also goes to Mr. Ramchandra Chakraborty, Managing Director, PSI Metals India Private Limited, and Joint Honorary Secretary of West Bengal State Center, IEI, moderator of this program. The same feelings also being showered to all the members of the council and division board members of ETDV, all members of the committee, West Bengal State Center, IEI, and all members of ET Engineering Division Subcommittee, Director Technical, IEI, and he has taken a wonderful initiative to organize this type of program. And last but not the least, my sincere thanks also goes to all who are behind the screen and giving their silent support in this technical webinar, so to make it grand success. So thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again from my side, Professor Dr. Madhurima Chattopadhyay and Dr. Devjyoti Chaudhary, for this presenting us a nice evening and illuminating session. Thank you very much. Look forward to see you again on this podium.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you
Have a nice
for
evening,
listening.
ma'am. Professor.
Good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chanchal, are you the host still?
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay. No, I know you're there. Okay. Okay, then thank you so much. Chanchal, can you please close the session?
Yeah, we'll close.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everyone.